Wendy's, as you mentioned, is known for being snarky and, like taking down even their fans a notch or two. And that was lovable for a while. But that can go too far if you don't do it right.
Right.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Marketing on Tap. My name is Sam Fiorella. This is my mate, Danny Brown. Today, Danny, we're wading into the world of boycotts. Again, that just seems to be a common theme lately. But so today we're going to be talking about a couple of things. The first is Marvel versus DC Comics, which is now the new Apple versus PC. There always seems to be a new debate of people picking sides. And it's affecting millions in revenue in the entertainment space anyway. But it's also creating a path of destruction for brands not getting out of or who don't get out of the way, or those who purposely get in the way. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and how that's affecting the rest of the marketing world. But that'll lead to the marketing of boycotts, which will be the second thing. Again, it's this black versus white, us versus them dichotomy of modern communication. And it's creating calls for boycotts almost daily. Oreos, Chick-fil-A, remember Nike, Gillette. Very recently, we talked about that on an earlier podcast. And now Wendy's is back. Even here in Canada, Tim Hortons has a call for a consumer boycott almost weekly. And Wendy's problems, which is really the third point that I want to delve into today, is based on a renewed boycott, which is due to the fact that they refuse to join fast food companies in ensuring humane wages and working conditions for laborers who pick fruits and vegetables on certain farms. And so there's been a lot of backlash on social media, and the celebrities are getting into it now. And that's really just causing a big furor over there. So I want to talk about this marketing of boycotts and where are we going with that. So that's what's on tap today. But literally on tap, well, I guess not literally on tap, figuratively on tap.
Roughly from on tap.
We have a beer here.
A couple of weeks back, I just handed this over to producer Anna.
Yeah, so we've got, this is another...
it's another good lot. Yeah, this one's a slightly different one. This is so the last time we had Farmstead Ale.
Yeah.
And this is their Town Country Ale. So what they've done is it's brewed off-site in Toronto, and they've based it on the flagship, Farmstead Ale, but they've actually fermented it with an alternative yeast strain, slightly different hops. Sorry, the only thing that this beer has in common with the Farmstead Ale is the hops. So still the same, 6.2% ABV, 30 IBU. So same as last week.
6.2, friends, 6.2%.
All right, so let's try. You got the
wait, let me get the Anna can ready.
Okay.
Anna did not like the last week's brew.
Different yeast this time, so you may like it.
So we're going to hopefully have one right for her. All right, there we go. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, man. So guys.
Yeah, I like the smell a lot.
Ooh, I like this one. Mind you, I like last week's too.
That's really nice.
Oh, this is Anna approved? Oh, okay. We have...
victory for Good Lot.
Yeah, there you go. Good Lot. Anna approved.
Makes all the difference.
Doesn't it?
It almost takes it to like a Pilsner in a way.
It is much lighter than the last. It feels it. Yeah. Anyway, I like it. Okay.
Good job.
Mind you, again, have you guys really ever seen me not like a beer on this episode? So I don't know. Okay, so Danny, let's discuss. Let's start with Wendy's. So by way of introduction, for the people that don't know, Gail Simone, this is how this whole thing started. Gail Simone, who's a famous female comic book writer, posted a funny tweet suggesting that fast food chains, or the name of fast food chains, would make great supervillain names. So she posted, face the fury of the Burger King. You know what I mean?
I like that.
That's actually a good one, isn't it? Beware the bombast of El Pollo Loco, or dread the danger of IHOP. Shudder at the sound of the Sizzler. So, I mean, it was really cool. It was a clever tweet. Clearly, she's a comic book writer, and a good one at that. So she decided to reach out to different brands and saying, ask their thought if they're a DC or a Marvel.
Okay.
Now, for those of you that are not in the comic book world, like Danny and I are, DC and Marvel are two different publishers, each publishing different, stories and heroes. So, for example, DC, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Batman, those names you'll all be familiar with. Whereas on the DC side,
on the Marvel side,
I don't pay attention. So who are some of the big
So
Marvel guys?
obviously you got the Spider-Man,
Spider-Man, and
you've got the Avengers,
Captain America,
Captain America, the Hulk, all these guys.
Exactly. And so anyway, it's become a real thing now. Maybe because of the movies that are just bringing up this conversation again, but you're either a big DC fan or you're a big Marvel fan. And by the way, I'm a big DC fan. Danny doesn't really understand comics, so he's a Marvel fan. And you all remember when it was like, I'm a Mac, I'm a PC.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you loved Macs, you hated PCs, even if you considered them a good product or good machine, you didn't care. You were a Mac, and so you had to hate them, and vice versa. Again, PC, Mac. I'm right. He's wrong. And it goes to the core of where we are today, I think, in our just society. It's really social media has taken those traditional, well, I like this, you like that, and it just exaggerated them to such a degree that it's almost impossible for us to have a conversation that isn't us versus them or taking extreme sides on an issue. Mm-hmm. But worse, it's getting to the point where marketers now are either taking advantage of it or getting burned by it when they try and take advantage of it because they don't know what to do. And that's the case here. So getting back to what this woman did is a lot of these brands like Sunny D's, Little Debbie's, Hooters, they got into the mix. And so she asked them, which are you? Are you Marvel or are you DC? No. Some of them came out with some really good lines. So my vote, Sunny D responded, my vote goes to Ryan Reynolds as he connects all universes, space, and time, which is a reference to the fact that he was actually in two movies, a DC movie and a Marvel movie. So they were politically correct, not picking sides. Others, like Little Debbie, responded back and said, are you referring to the movies? We enjoy Marvel's ambition, but we also appreciate DC Universe's willingness to allow each hero's story to be told in unique ways. So both. So there was some sitting on the fence. I'm not going to piss anybody off. Clearly they know that this is a hot debate right now. And if they take a side, there's going to be some backlash.
Especially with comic book fans.
Book fans, right? So, others were a little bit not so political or less politically correct. So Wimpy's in the UK says, well, we stand with any great British heroes. It doesn't matter where they're from, right? But then Wendy's came in, and Wendy's was basically said, Marvel, period. You know what I mean? Like there is no attempt to say we understand the lexicon, we understand the culture, which is what everybody else tried to do. We're going to talk about that later. And so when they were called out for basically somebody said, nah, just jumping on a known popular bandwagon because they just said Marvel. Clearly, they didn't do any research. Clearly, they didn't understand the market. And so they responded, you want to do this? We got time. Sega is on hiatus. So they tried to basically use some of the popular cultural references.
Yeah, and Wendy's are known for burning their followers, right?
Right, exactly. And it just didn't work out this time because now there's all these calls for boycotting Wendy's and calls for more than that. This is just, you don't understand us. So they've created an environment for themselves now where they've alienated a very large portion of the population. But is that necessarily a bad thing?
I don't think it is if you know the audience that you're going after is not the fans of DC, for example, to use this case. So whether you know your audience is fans of DC or not, it goes back to knowing your audience. We've spoke about this before, and who you want to attract, who you want to be aligned with, and who you want to be aligned with your business. So I think Wendy's has been known to take stands consistently. I mentioned they like to burn people, they like to troll people. So I think to a degree, Wendy's says, okay, we're Marvel through and through. We're proud of that. We don't care what people think.
Even though they probably weren't, they were most likely jumping on the bandwagon because Marvel's had such great success in the cinemas.
It's possible because Wendy's did come with a follow-up tweet that came out with a whole bunch of reason and why they liked Marvel. Although to be fair, if you look at that tweet, it mentions the big recent Marvel as opposed to really going back into the Marvel universe from, say, Spider-Man issue 1, stuff like that. So it could be just a social media manager doing a quick Google search in between that tweet.
That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened when he saw the backlash that was coming.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't look at the other. So did the other guys who did weigh in, with a more politically correct response or a more informed response? Is that the right way to go? Was that a smarter strategy than what Wendy's decided to do?
I think for this audience it was, because
Yeah.
we're sort of, it's geeks, right? And I'm a geek, Sam's
Yeah.
a geek, so we say this with love. It's geeks,
Yeah.
and geeks know their stuff.
Geeks who drink beer. That's the next podcast.
Yeah, exactly. The geeks know their stuff. That's why Star Wars, Star Trek.
Yeah.
Divide down the middle. You know
exactly.
your audience, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's another thing. You're a big Star Wars guy. I'm a big Star Trek fan.
Right.
I'm not a big Star Wars fan at all. I don't get it. It's the same movie 100 times over. But that's a separate issue.
So I do think in this case you don't take a risk. You see what sort of feedback is and the responses from the audience, and then you can sort of address with follow-up tweets or whatever. Have some fun with that.
Well, that's what I thought. And you know what? This really leads me to, let's talk about two things. What could before we wrap this up, what advice would we give a marketer? So if Wendy's was our client and we were managing their social media, or their community manager was and came to us and said, what do I do with this? What advice would we give them?
Remain neutral.
Remain neutral?
Remain neutral, and then determine based on the feedback you're getting, can I take this to another level and actually take a side?
Oh, you're such a diplomat. See, I disagree with you.
That's because I'm Scottish, Canadian, going back to Canadian.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know that this would be an argument in our office, I think, in terms of what we would do in this case, because I honestly believe that today and this is sort of the segue into the next point, which is I believe you need to take a stand. I believe that you need to determine who your audience is today, understanding that you're going to be alienated some people, but that's okay. They're not your audience. Understand who your audience is. Know what their cultural references are. Understand what's important to them, and then align your brand to that, but do it expertly. Don't do it half-assed. Like, you have to do the research, right? So in that case, maybe take a poll of the employees, right? That might be a way. Well, we did a poll of our employees and this is what they came out with.
60% DC.
And it's whatever it is. So or maybe hire somebody that like us, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, that understands that particular marketplace, that understands the geek, fan world.
Yeah.
Or just maybe completely ignore it. That might be another, I don't recommend that one, but that's another option. But this gets into, Danny, the marketing of boycotts, which is the second point that we want to talk about. Businesses, I think today, maybe this is a question. Are businesses courting boycotts? I wrote a blog post, I don't know, when they had a whole Oreo thing, when they did that rainbow colored Oreo.
Right, yeah.
And there was all those crazy boycotts around it in Chick-fil-A. I did a blog post a couple of years ago that talked about the marketing of boycotts, and that brands are purposely going after it because it's a great way to get some attention, right? Remember the old saying, all publicity is good publicity as long as you spell your name right. So I'm thinking this is important. This is coming back. So is it important? Are they? What do you think? Are brands purposely going after this? I want to be boycotted, or I want to be on the other side of it?
I think some are. You mentioned Chick-fil-A, you mentioned Oreo, and you look at some of the boycotts of the big guys that have happened over the last few years, and the support they get. Yes, they get a whole bunch of people say, I'm going to burn my shoes, I'm going to never eat at Chick-fil-A again or whatever. But then you get a whole bunch of people eating at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
You got a whole bunch of people going out and buying Nike shoes.
Right.
The last one that just happened, the
Gillette.
You got a whole bunch of people buying Gillette that maybe have bought someone else's razors before. So I think marketers and the execs at these companies are looking and saying, you know what, this is a way to get rid of the people that aren't going to buy our products in 5 years' time, and bring on the people now that are going to buy our products for the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah, I think sophisticated marketers right now are understanding that this is our world. We may not agree with it. We may not like how black and white, how, left versus right, blue, white versus black, how divided we are as a society, DC versus Marvel, Star Wars versus Star Trek. I mean, but that is where we are. And for the foreseeable future, this is where we're going to be. So, you make a really good point when it comes to Gillette. Gillette knew. They're not stupid, the marketers over there. They knew that this was going to have a big effect. And when you take a look at some of the imagery and some of the personalities that they used inside that video, they knew that it was going to drive this. And they did that. And I think Gillette or Nike was the same thing. They knew when they took Colin Kaepernick, you know what I mean? And they were going to create an ad. And now they're doubling down on it. They just created a jersey of Kaepernick because he's not playing.
Right.
So they actually created an Icons jersey with Kaepernick on it. That's just sold out within days. So they knew that was going to create a controversy and it was going to get people riled up and it was going to get a lot of people burning their stuff. But as they proved, their sales actually went up after like the initial decrease because the markets got nervous. When everybody saw the sales, their stock price went up again, right?
Yeah.
So I do believe that that's the case. And why that's important, if you remember when we talked about this with Gillette, there was the Enzo agency did a study that we referenced of 150 brands for relevancy among millennials and boomers. And what when they looked at the most popular brands or the brands that they most likely would buy from or they recognize, boomers picked companies like Procter & Gamble, Chevrolet, the American Automobile Association, whereas millennials, which right now hold, I think, the biggest buying power in America, Starbucks, Spotify, and Twitter,
right,
and brands like Procter & Gamble and Chevrolet were way down at the bottom of the list. And it's because Starbucks and Spotify and those types of companies have purposely aligned themselves with the beliefs, the culture, the nomenclature, the vernacular of that audience, right? It's their practices, like Starbucks water, you know what I mean, and free trade coffees and things like that. That's what's aligned culturally with millennials, and so they're going to spend more of their money there. They're looking at the long-term strategy, just like Gillette did. Wasn't that long ago, we had a podcast where we talked about Instagrammable packaging. Remember the ice cream? Upstarts, the micro ice creams that says, their packages are being designed to be Instagrammable, right? And Instagrammable restaurants.
Right. The tables.
They have certain tables with certain lighting specifically for Instagram shots. So they understand that this is it. So I'm thinking that that's going to be the way to go. But if we take a look at Wendy's, what's this whole furor right now about the boycott? There's like the whole the Marvel DC thing, but that's not really the basis for the boycott.
No. So, I mean, the Wendy's are getting boycotted as a huge, and this has been going on for a few years now, but it's really come to the fore, this year because universities and millennials and students have got involved. Wendy's is one of the only large fast food companies that aren't part of the Fair Food program,
right?
Which, as you mentioned earlier, ensures living wage, humane working conditions, and better conditions all around for the farmers that supply and the supply providers for Wendy's. Burger King's involved, McDonald's is involved, etc. Wendy's is not. So now you've got all these universities, and there's like a march next month with 4 key universities that are going to be, marching with the students to protest. And until you actually join the Fair Food program, your burgers will not be sold on our campuses, and we'll boycott your restaurants near our campuses.
And I think part of this is the fact that there was an LA Times article, if I read correctly, there was an LA Times article a couple of years ago that documented some of the not only child labor issues, but sexual harassment and abuse of women on Mexican farms where these tomatoes and other produce was being grown. And I think what's happening now is maybe there's a convergence of facts. Number one, yes, millennials, university students, that next generation below them have glommed onto this. And we understand that with them in particular, if your corporate practices don't align with their cultural beliefs, as we've been talking, there's a big problem. And they have the power of social media to affect it. But also they're tacking on to the Me Too movement. Right. And this is where I guess Wendy's made yet another mistake. Instead of saying, okay, this is something that's important to our audience, we need to understand that the biggest cohort stands behind this. We need to get behind it. What they did is they basically reacted negatively. Somebody in the marketing team I forget where they published this, but basically said, you guys are using the Me Too movement and the Time's Up movement to support your business strategy or your campaign. You're co-opting somebody else's thing, and that's just terrible.
Wow.
Well, of course, that was like completely insensitive.
That's Tinder to a fuse, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so what happened, Alyssa Milano, who is like a huge, big celebrity and a huge proponent of the Me Too movement, she tweeted out something in response and said, "Hey, at Wendy's, if you really want to get on the wrong side of the Time's Up movement and the Me Too movement, keep using our name to attack and belittle farm worker women who are fighting to keep themselves and their sisters safe from rape in the fields." And then she read it was like a 500-word post that she posted. So, and then of course other celebrities got behind it, and now there's this massive boycott that's being planned. So they really just don't understand that cultural relevance of the movement and how that's impacting how people buy. And ultimately, as a marketer, that's what we need to be worried about. What influences people to buy a product one way or the other?
Well, and what's ironic about Wendy's is their founder, I think it's Dave Thomas, 40 years ago put together the 4 core mantras of Wendy's. One of them, do the right thing. And you look at what's happening now. Wendy's reaction to this was to pull their production suppliers from Mexico and over to the US and Canada. But still, similarly, the bad practices are still happening at the greenhouses that they've moved it to. So they never really address the issue.
I think, what, this is maybe old school marketing, because there's a lot, I know as an old school marketer, I know I look like I'm 25, but I'm not actually 25. I remember that you could basically cover up almost any kind of bad publicity by throwing out good publicity. You know what I mean? Like, I know with this one, Wendy's keeps tweeting out things like, now 100% fresh, never frozen. So they just keep putting out these messages that they think that people are going to just read and forget about what they were complaining about in the past. That doesn't work today anymore. Social media puts your brand, the value of your brand, what your brand represents, in the hands of the consumer. Your brand is really what people say it is, not what you say it is anymore, or their experiences with it and how they regurgitate it back out through social media, which then picks up steam and momentum, and then the news picks it up, and then we pick it up, because now there's podcasts, there's blogs, there's vlogs. There's so many, we're all content producers today, right? And so you don't have control of that brand. So you need to understand talk about influence marketing. It's not about, am I going to get Kylie Jenner to tweet about my product? It's what is the psyche of our audience. And it might only be 50% of the world, but if that's the word we're going after, we need to understand that, and we need to align our messaging with them. Right. And figure that out. So anyway, so those are some challenges for you today. We got our last call. So let's call Danny. What's our takeaway that we want to leave everybody with? What's the one thing that sticks out in your mind?
I think one of the things you just closed with there actually is understanding today's psyche, right? And how to address that. If you think back when social media first came out and businesses were trying to get their heads around how do we address social media, as a customer care platform, now as a marketing platform, etc. And it took a while, but they kind of understood that, and marketers knew social media marketing. I think it's now you got to look at the corporate responsibility and the social activism behind these platforms and behind the customers.
Right.
And now do the research. Okay, back in the day, we researched how to do social media. Now we need to research how to do social responsibility with our marketing.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And there is a big shift that a lot of brands just don't want to get to. And for me, I think one of the things that maybe I haven't said yet in this conversation is Wendy's, as you mentioned, is known for being snarky and, like taking down even their fans a notch or two. And that was lovable for a while. But that can go too far if you don't do it right. Right. And so now it's actually gone the other way, because not only are they being, it's not just being snarky necessarily, but it's also, as I said, they've gone to the point where they've misaligned themselves with that cultural attitudes of their audience. If you're going to be risky, if you're going to try, do it, but do it with a plan, and make sure that you've got a solid strategic group, digital marketers behind you, so that you don't make these missteps if you're going to try and push it. So get the support that you need. So anyway, that's it for today. I hope this inspired some conversations out there. Leave us some comments. We'd love to hear from you what your thoughts are on this topic. And definitely follow us. Yeah, I'll do my usual puppet thing. Subscribe on YouTube, look for the notification bell, drop a little comment below. And please, whatever platform you prefer for podcasting,
subscribe, and share with your friends. We'll see you there.
Yeah, and if you are definitely a smart comic book fan and you're a DC guy, let us know that you're a DC fan more than a Marvel fan. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.